Hello, everyone. How are we doing today? So happy to have you guys back. I'm currently watching my dog attack one of my houseplants, just just beyond the scope of the camera. So it's a really unfortunate viewpoint that I have here, but I hope all of you guys are having a great day so far. Um, Real excited to get this third. No, absolutely not. Tomato. Hey, stop it.
It's kind of funny that her name's Tomato, or his name's
Yes,
Tomato, and they're eating the
her name.
plant.
Yeah,
It'd be funny if it was a tomato plant that.
it would be. I think there must be a bug on the windowsill, which is absolutely just like smashing a beautiful plant that I have. Stop it. That's how I speak to my SDRs as well. In that tone of voice.
We'll have to do another workshop on communication with SDRs and the crossover between, yeah, using words with people and words with animals.
Yeah, and how you shouldn't speak to people in that tone of voice. Um, okay, cool. That aside, very excited to be doing our third edition of this workshop. So exciting. We've covered so much ground. And we've got another exciting bunch of stuff to cover today, and then one more after that. So exciting. While people are trickling in, why don't we give for those people that are brand new, why don't we give them a little bit of intro on who we each are before we dive into your like big proper intro in the actual workshop.
Yeah, that sounds great. And I've got a question because I know you always ask everybody who's attending a question. So I was thinking,
Good idea.
we're not going to do a weather one, but since you just talked about animals and plants, I feel like some people are animal people and some people are just, I'm not going to say non-animal people, but maybe they're plant people because
Yeah.
you kind of you care for them, right? So are you, when in the chat, are you an animal person or a plant person? And feel free to specify what plant or what animal person you are.
Yes.
For me, I'm a little bit of both, but I would definitely say I'm a plant person. I'm not in. We had a dog growing up as a family, but I have
Yeah.
no intention of getting one anytime soon. I've got a little 2-year-old. He's more than a handful, and we've got a
Yeah.
big garden. So plants and humans are my thing. And I'm Drew, yeah, the sales playbook builder, and I help founders transition out of founder-led sales with confidence and help formalize sales processes and sales documentation.
Cool. Yeah. I am Sarah Hicks. I'm an SDR manager at Predictable Revenue. I am I'm an animal person. I came to plants quite late in my life. I did for a while. I like the look of plants. I love that aesthetic, like a beautiful. I want the like the vines all over my bookshelf and all that kind of stuff. That's just like
Hmm.
the Pinterest worthy plant home. But I did not really get into learning how to care for plants until very recently. So I had, like cacti and a couple of like succulents for quite a long time. And so I
Yeah.
would not have called myself a plant person until very recently. I moved into a new apartment and it has an exposed brick wall. And I was like, now's my chance. Now is my chance to be
Yeah.
Pinterest worthy. And so I bought a whole bunch of really nice plants and I've been caring for them. I've been giving them plant food. I've been watering them when they're supposed to be watered instead of overwatering them or letting them die. And they're all gorgeous and they are flourishing. And this one that sits on the windowsill, every so often I go over to it and it's a vine. So I like lay it out a path so that it can have
Yeah.
space. And every so often I go over to it and it is not where I left it. And I always thought it must be sort of a function of it growing, that it has like a bit of movement to it. It like unfurls a leaf and it slightly changes the direction of its path. But it
Yeah.
wasn't until recently that I noticed that the dog stands on the back of the couch and absolutely just smashes it on the windowsill. So that is why my plant keeps changing direction and why a bunch of its leaves are always brown. So that's very sad, but the rest of my plants I take good care of. Um, I would love to see, has anybody said anything? Okay, we got some cats, dogs, everything. Marrow, me and you both got a dog, had a cat growing up that I loved. I would love to have more. I'm definitely gonna like just bring home pets as time goes on.
Yeah.
And then we got another Julia is an animal person, dogs. Okay, I can see that. I can see that. What about you guys? I guess it also kind of depends on the type of lifestyle that you have, right? Like you
Yeah.
mentioned, Drew, you have a kid. You don't need to be taking care of like another little being that doesn't know how to take care of itself, but a plant is a little lower maintenance. Um, but maybe if you have like a super busy job, it's tough to have an animal, but plants are better. Or yeah, let us know, guys. Let us know. It's like really telling about a person,
It's true.
whether they,
Yeah. And I know you
yeah,
said it's like it depends on your lifestyle. Our neighbors have 3 kids and one of them owns a restaurant and it's like pretty, and the other one's a teacher and it's pretty busy like these times, and they got a dog like a month ago. just to
Wow.
throw into the mix. I got 3 kids
Wow.
and a dog now.
Oof. It's a lot of little critters.
Yeah, that's
Wow.
awesome. Yeah, mix of
Congrats.
dog people and plant people in the crowd today.
Yep. Yep. We
That's
do. We
great.
got some people saying hello. Hello, Kibran. Thank you for joining us today. Um, cool. Perfect. Okay. Well, let's launch right into it. We got a couple things to go over today, some really important stuff. Give us the little overview, Drew, of what happened in the past couple of weeks for those new people so that they know what to go back and kind of, catch up on before they do all the work that we teach them today.
Yeah, that's a good call. So yeah, this is part 3 of a 4-part series that we called "Build a Repeatable, Scalable Sales Culture from Scratch." And these aren't necessarily, let's say, webinars; they're more workshops. So what we're here to do is talk about a certain aspect of repeatable and scalable sales culture and building that from scratch, and kind of deep dive into 4 different elements of that, and give you the tools and worksheets and all the information that we can give you, so that you can go back and do it yourself, essentially. So yeah, the first one was the build your sales playbook. So once you kind of have everything for your playbook, the 4 steps, actually just putting it together and using it with your sales team, or your new sales team. Last week, we talked about how to build your sales process from growth. So mapping out your sales process from prospecting to, say, closed one, and that handoff to customer success, and the different sales enablement resources that go into that sales process, and thinking about mapping that out. And also the people side of things, of like where they fit in to the sales process. And today we're going to be talking about kind of the heart of it, which is your ideal customer profile, who you're selling to, and what better way to connect and sell to your prospects and your customers by building empathy with them. And we're going to talk a little bit more about that in a bit. And then next week is our final part 404. I'm going to shed a tear when we're all finished. We'll have to do
Yeah.
an 8-part series of something else coming up later on in the year. But yeah, we'll do part 404, which is really going to talk about, you've got your sales playbook, you got your sales process, you have your ideal customer profile dialed in, you're selling with empathy. Now you're going to be building your sales team, and hiring and onboarding and creating KPIs and coaching metrics and that sort of thing. So we're talking about that next week to round it all out. And all the recordings are available after this. They're on YouTube. We also have a landing page that you can download all the resources, all the notes that we have. You get copies of everything. So we're not hiding anything here. We just want to give you as much info and resources to build your repeatable and scalable sales culture.
Awesome. Yeah, exactly. Tons of stuff we've covered, lots of stuff left to cover, but really it's a nice, robust way of building out your entire sales playbook, as Drew just explained. So yeah, we'll have Veronica just drop in the chat the link to that landing page so that you have it there. You can go back and find any of these resources, and you can do all of this stuff on your own so that it's really specific to your company. But also, we would love to help you do some of this stuff live. So please be active in the chat. If you have a question, if you want to hear how this would relate to your ideal customer profile, or if you have questions about how to define it, any question you have about what we're talking about today, please drop it in the chat. I will be watching that YouTube chat and posing those questions to Drew so that they don't get missed. And we will also save some time at the end to do a proper Q&A so that if it's specific to something we're chatting about right now, we'll mix it in. If it's something that's a little bit more broad, we might save it for that Q&A, but all of those questions will be answered. So please ask them in the chat. And one more exciting piece of information before we dive into it, we have a giveaway, don't we, Drew?
I always forget about the giveaway. We're giving away so much information and all that sort of thing. I forget that we actually have a super prize, which you don't really see in like webinars and workshops. So we got like a prize that's worth over 10 grand, and I'm throwing in a sales playbook build. So I'm going to show you how to do it yourself. But if you are like a lot of founders or entrepreneurs, new sales leaders, you don't necessarily have the time, you want to like get it done sooner and also run it by someone like myself who's built a ton of sales playbooks. I'm throwing in that. So we work together and we actually build your sales playbook from scratch together. So I'm super excited to offer that to everybody as part of the prize.
Yeah, and from predictable revenue side, we are also contributing a couple of things. We have an email sequence consultation. So helping you build out our coaching consulting team will help you build out the ideal email sequence to get in touch with your ideal customer profile, which of course relates pretty well to today. And we're also going to throw in both of Aaron Ross's books. So that is Predictable Revenue and From Impossible to Inevitable. Drew's got it right there. Beautiful book. And yeah, altogether a value of $10,000. So a pretty cool prize. We will be announcing the winner of this giveaway on May 14th, which is the day after our final Thursday session. So please stay tuned and make sure that by registering yourself for these sessions, that's you entering for this giveaway. So make sure that you do that so that you have the best shot possible at winning the prize. But without further ado, let us get started.
Yeah, let's jump into the iceberg of empathy and building relationships with your ideal customer profile. So, as I was saying before, we're here to give you as much information. So, like Sarah said, throw your questions or comments, whatever you want, in the chat. We're going to be as responsive as we can through this. If you're here and listening, then might as well get as much as you can out of it. So, feel free to get those fingers typing, throw it in the chat. And again, we have the worksheets after, so we're just here to give you as much as we can. So that's our promise to you. So yeah, a little bit about myself. I'm Drew, the Sales Playbook Builder Williams, and I run an organization called Sales Playbook Builder, and we help founders transition out of founder-led sales with confidence. So they have that confidence in the sales process, their go-to-market strategy, and confidence in hiring new sales team members and onboarding them and making them part of this awesome sales engine that they're going to that you're going to be building. A little bit about my background. I've been in sales since my very first job. Other than that one when I was in high school at a restaurant. First job was in sales, inside sales. It was outbound, but we were inside. Sometimes it's a little bit confusing, but we had the headset on, making 100 phone calls plus a day. I never made 100. Our minimum was 100, but I was a 150, sometimes 200 dial person. We had some good competitions going on with the sales team, and then moved on to Career Builder, which was a out territory manager role, and kind of on track for a management position there. And this was early on, kind of like mid 20s, late 20s, and at that time, and I'd always been entrepreneurial and wanted to do something on my own. And it just so happened at that time, my younger brother, he was diagnosed with testicular cancer. And let's fast forward today, he's happy and healthy. He's got a couple kids. But at the time, went through surgeries, went through chemotherapy, and we wanted to do something together to kind of honor and celebrate that experience that he went through. So we created a nonprofit called Heal for Life. It was Healthy Everyday Active Living for Life, and we were able to do some inspirational speaking, working with schools and sports teams around promoting young men's health and mental and physical health. And so we did that for a little bit, and then some funding dried up, so we needed to go back to paying the bills and supporting our family. So that's when I dove headfirst into the world of SaaS and startups. And I was the first hire for a few different SaaS companies, working directly with the founder in a selling capacity, but also in a building capacity, because I realized at that time, coming from working at the Fortune 500 companies, that everyone knew who we were, knew our brand, and we had a marketing team and marketing resources and everything you needed as a sales team and a sales rep to really thrive and succeed in the marketplace. We didn't have that when I was working with the founders, and there were some elements of it, but it wasn't formalized. And there wasn't kind of a formal playbook there to really support the sales rep. So what I wanted to do is become an advocate for both those like first sales hires, to make sure that they're getting the tools that they need to thrive in their job, and also to support the founders and entrepreneurs that are looking to build a multi-million-dollar SaaS business, multi-million-dollar business, and knowing that eventually you have to start doing the sales, but eventually you have to transition out of you being the main seller, and now you have to like hire your sales team. And a lot of the people that I work with haven't done that before, so they need a little bit of help in that. So that's where we started with Sales Playbook Builder. That's a little bit about me. So we asked the plant and animal question at the beginning, but when we think of prospecting and kind of reaching out, whether it's emailing or phoning your prospects, what's the what would you say is the biggest challenge to kind of communicating with them? What's the biggest challenge that you see in that prospecting and reaching out to your prospects and your potential customers? Is it the fact that you don't know what to say to them, you don't know how often to say it, you don't know kind of who to talk to, that sort of thing. So like, what's kind of the biggest challenge in that communication piece and like reaching out to the prospects and finding out who they are?
Hmm, that's a good question. Yeah, I'd love to hear what you guys have to say. Um, Honestly, there's quite a few challenges that have come up in my experience as an SDR, and then now on the our client facing SDR teams. It can be on in my experience, it can be something as simple as like you're in the right place, you're saying the right things, but then you don't know how to objection handle. It's just kind of like a, you know, a
Hmm.
technique thing. You don't know the best way to sort of flip those objections, break through those smokescreen objections. Um, but then it can be as tough as, you know, you're reaching out to who you think is the right person, and they are always telling you that they're not the right person, or they're telling you like, oh no, I don't have a need for that. And you're like, well, somebody that I'm reaching out to must have a need for this. So there's quite a few that I've encountered that way. But yeah, curious to hear what you guys see as your biggest challenges in prospecting. And yeah, what is the kind of biggest hurdle or obstacle to actually having a good conversation with that prospect on the other end of the phone? Drew, what were your biggest challenges when you were working in that founder led sales? Well, as the first sales hire after founder led sales.
Yeah. Yeah. As the answers are coming in, feel free to shout them out. But we can help out. What I saw was one of the biggest challenges or the kind of the biggest pain points is that, you kind of touched on it there, where just like there is, let's say you get through to somebody, but there's just no connection. You're not, it's like you're kind of met somebody for the first time and you don't have that connection with them. You're not vibing with them. You're not, I don't
Mhm.
know, saying the right things or saying it in the right way or reaching them in the right, let's say, medium. So what I see a lot, is just kind of that lack of connection with that prospect or that potential buyer. So you don't really kind of get that spark, let's say.
Okay, we got one answer here in the chat saying getting an initial response and not knowing whether that's because you're targeting the wrong people or not presenting the offer clearly enough. Okay, so getting an initial response is the toughest part, getting that
Just getting a
first
response
answer,
back,
getting something.
just
And
getting
yeah,
something back. Yeah.
and then
And
not
that's not,
knowing if it's the person you're targeting or if it's the messaging that's causing that.
yeah, and it could be a few things. Like you said, you could just have no connection, with them in that
Hmm.
case. Because there's so many unknowns because they're not responding to you. So we're gonna be talking about empathy. So like imagining yourself in somebody else's shoes and experiencing life in their world. So
Hmm.
sometimes it could be no connection. It could be wrong messaging. So you could be thinking that you're saying the right things because it's making sense to you, but when it's falling on the prospect side, they're, let's say, reading an email that you had sent out and it just doesn't make sense to them. And it makes me think of, it's never happened to me because do my research, but and I've always, I guess, been a more Starbucks versus Tim Hortons person. But you can imagine someone going to Tim Hortons for the past 10 years and they get their double double, a large double double, and you walk into a Starbucks and you want a coffee and you say large double double. You think you know what you're saying, but on the other end of it, they're like, they know what you want, but the wording and the messaging
Yeah.
that they use is grande or venti. I don't know what the double double is, version of
I
it.
think
You add
they'd
your
be like,
own
put your
anyway.
own,
You
yeah,
put your
put
own
your
in,
own
exactly.
cream and sugar in.
So you're just getting the wrong message. You might be thinking you're saying the right thing, but it's not falling on the prospect, the
Yeah,
way that you thinking it's actually falling on them.
absolutely. Somebody else is mentioning here that for them it is creating value that's the most difficult. So specifically tailored for the prospect as opposed to the general value of the product. Yeah, very interesting. That kind of it touches on both wrong messaging and the no connection. Because if you're saying a general message about coffee, the type of coffee that you want, it may not be the tailored message specific to Starbucks that they understand
Hmm.
and will respond to.
Exactly. And the other piece that I see is it could be, it's like bad timing. So maybe you have the message and you have a connection, but it's the wrong timing for whatever reason. And it could be and bad timing could mean a million things. It could be the bad timing of the day, the bad timing of year,
Hmm.
the bad just kind of timing in the marketplace. So the more you can understand your buyer and the prospects and building empathy with them, the better you get at finding out when the right time is to connect with them. And it's like when you have I'm sure we've all told a joke that we in our head we're like, oh, this is going to be hilarious, and then you said the joke and it just kind of fell on deaf ears because it was like it might be the right joke, but it was just the wrong time. You just like said it the wrong time, and I feel like that's comedians are awesome at it. Like they're able to deliver their message and their lines when it works. The timing is
Hmm.
amazing, and it's a hoot. But when the timing is bad, it's really bad.
Yeah.
Any other from the chat?
Somebody's mentioning that uh first of all, Starbucks lingo always confuses them. Fair enough. Um,
Yes.
and then someone else is saying it's hard to handle the "I'm not interested" objection. Um, and then another a comment about just ask for the largest cup at Starbucks because who knows what they call it.
Just give me a
Just give
bucket
me the
of
big one.
coffee.
Yeah.
Yeah, yeah. I found somebody told me that there's like a smaller, you can get like there's like the tall, but then there's also like a small, but it's not called, there's some other secret one. It's not the espresso, but there's like one in between
Yes.
espresso cup and a tall or something, and it was like some secret hack. So yeah. Um yeah, so when you get it right, like when you are able to build empathy with your prospects and your potential buyers, it it goes like thing like if magic happens. It's like when you meet, I have a friend, Nick, he's my best friend, and we haven't seen each other for over a year now. And before that, we both have like busy lives and full-time work and families. So, and he lives in a different city than I do. It's like a 6-hour drive away. So we don't see each other very often. But when we do see each other, it's like we pick up like right where we left off. It's like we were living with each other for like the past 10 years. So because we just get each other and we have so much experience and we understand each other, there's no kind of awkwardness. There's, you just kind of pick up from right from where you left off, and that's
Hmm.
what the aspiration could be when you do really have that connection with your prospects. So when you do get it right, you have this like deeper connection. It's not just surface level. You have a deeper connection with who your prospect is. You end up you can almost like finish their sentences because you're so ingrained in their day to day and their feeling and their pains and their challenges that you are putting yourself in the shoes of your prospect every time you pick up the phone or every time you jump on Zoom or every time you write an email. So then when they're on the receiving end of that communication, there's this connection that it's like, oh wow, you know so much about me, and what my life is like professionally and maybe a little bit of personally as well, that you're building this deep connection where you're just able to kind of finish each other's sentences, and it's really really special at that point. Another awesome thing that happens is that you start creating relevant messaging to people. So when you do have a deeper understanding, and we're going to go into kind of building out what that looks like, how do you go deeper with your ideal customer profile in a few minutes, and we'll build that out together. But what you start doing is building relevant messaging. So you have this deep connection, deep understanding of who you're selling to, and now you're able to craft messages that's relevant to them. So you might have heard of like personalization and personalization at scale. That's kind of one element of it. The other piece is this like relevancy. So it could be personal to you, which is like, um, Sarah, I know you're a BDR manager. It's like, okay, that's personal. And it's like, I saw you did a webinar with and workshop with Drew at Sales Playbook Builder. Are you interested in webinar software? So that's it's personalized, and there's a little bit of sell in there, but is it relevant? Like, is she interested in buying it? Does she actually do the buying? Is it the right time? Is she looking at webinar software? So when you get it right, it's, I remember I was in Chicago with our family. This was like 4 years ago now, and we traveled there from Toronto. Got there, beautiful day, going for a walk. We like packed our bags, packed a lunch, went for a walk. We were just walking out all day and walking by some shops that had like trinkets and little stuff like that. And all of a sudden, it was like out of the blue, it just started like downpouring, like just
Mm.
crazy rain. And we were not ready for it because the forecast didn't call for rain. We didn't have a rain jacket, we didn't have an umbrella. And it was like, I remember this store that we walked by and it had like a whole bunch of umbrellas. And now that is relevant to me because I'm
Yeah.
someone who has some extra cash in my pocket. I'm a tourist. I don't have an umbrella and it's pouring rain out and I'm wet. So that message is extremely relevant to me because now I'm ready to buy today because I don't have an umbrella and it's raining out.
Hmm. Makes sense.
And the last piece is being able to be proactive. So we kind of talked about finishing sentences. So when you're able to really have a deep connection with your prospect, you can then forecast and look ahead in terms of the messaging that you're sending out to kind of know what they're going to be thinking about or know what their challenges are going to be in a week or in 5 weeks. So I recently had a client and I just closed a client this morning and I had sent them, we had a few chats, sent a proposal, and as a follow up, she's a CRO sales leader for a SaaS company. And just recently, I remembered this mental health article from a company that specializes in mental health and sales, and they created this awesome little PDF guide around mental health in sales. And I was just thinking because I was getting into a little bit of a rut because you're kind of stuck at home. It's lonely. You haven't been out in a while. You're missing the connection with your friends and family as well as your teammates. So I sent her that note, knowing that her team is probably thinking that, and she loved it, obviously. And so I use that as a touch point to know to kind of be proactive with them because I kind of know what you're going through at that particular point.
Nice. We have another comment here in the chat about something that is really hard. And it is to get connection with somebody with a really technical job or position. That totally makes sense, especially when I don't always fully understand what they do. What would you suggest that this person do in that kind of scenario? How do you forge that connection if this is like a CTO or like CIO or something like that, and you of course are a salesperson with sales expertise and probably a little bit of technical expertise if that's who you're reaching out to, but you're not a CIO.
Yeah, it's definitely, I mean, you run into this a lot in like more technical sales and more, let's say, specialized products. So if you're not selling a CRM to salespeople, they get that. So there's not a whole lot of kind of learning curve on what the actual product does, and you're able to relate to that prospect. You also see some disconnect when you have, let's say, a junior rep talking to someone who's been in the industry like 20, 30 years, whether it is technical or not. They
Hmm.
just don't, they're kind of punching above their weight class in that. So how do you make that connection? Stay tuned. We're going to make that connection in a few minutes.
There you go.
I'll show you, we're actually going to walk through this and like how you can kind of start unpeeling and unpacking who your ideal customer profile is in order to make a connection with them, because there's the technical piece, but there's also the human aspect of it. So there's a little bit of both. Obviously on the technical side, research and kind of put yourself in the shoes of who you're selling to, and find out what they read, find out what sort of education they have, find out how they get their own technical knowledge so that you can get a little bit up to speed. Another awesome way that some world-class companies do their onboarding, which helps with this, is when I was working at 3M, we were selling products to collision repair shops and garages. So we sold sandpaper and um, Bondo and body filler and tape and all this sort of thing. And I I wasn't a car guy. I never like enjoyed cars. You'd never think that I was a car person. I was a sports person, but never a car person. So I'm in this job, and now I have to go to body shops and speak with body shop owners. At this time, I was in my mid 20s. Body shop guys, mostly guys. There were some women, but body shop people, and they probably have been in the industry for like 15, 20, 30, some of them like 40 years, like some 65-year-old guys in the back that are sanding cars, and they've been doing that for like the past 30 years. So how do I make a connection with them? How do I even start having a conversation with them when I don't even know, like, other than the tire and the bumper and windows, like that's all I knew about cars. It's hard to gain some credibility. So what they did was basically say, okay, Drew, we have an awesome customer. They're a body shop. They're one of our most loyal. We have a great relationship with them. In your second week on the job as a salesperson, you're going to go put on an outfit, put on a mask, and you're going to work in this body shop for a week. You're going to work alongside one of the technicians and a couple different technicians, so you get an idea of the flow of the actual body shop and the collision repair shop, how it works, and just get your hands dirty doing the actual job. And it was an incredible learning experience for me. And HubSpot does the same thing on their onboarding. They have, on their marketing side, they have their new reps go in and like build out, kind of put themselves in the shoes as a customer and build out their own website and their own funnels and all this sort of thing, so they can get frustrated with the issues that they're having and they can actually feel it. So a great way of doing it is like put your salespeople or yourself into your customer's life by actually doing the job that they're doing.
Interesting. Good idea.
I'm still not into cars, just for the record, but I can polish cars really good. Okay, so other than actually going into the actual job, what we're going to talk about is how we can kind of break down who our ideal customer profile is and build more of a connection with them and think about empathy. And when we think about empathy, it's about imagining yourself in the other person's shoes, imagining the other person who you're talking to, you're communicating with, imagining how they're feeling, what they're doing right this second, and kind of how their day is going. So we'll talk about that in just a second. But yeah, just recapping what we've gone over. So the first workshop was around building out your sales playbook, and we had the 4-step process, which is audit, align, assemble, and accelerate. And we see this as a constant. So your sales playbook doesn't just sit on the shelf, it continuously evolves and changes over time. Last week we talked about mapping out the sales process from start to finish, and then today what we're going to be doing is talking about our ideal customer profile, which is at the heart of this. Because when we're building a sales process, we're building a sales playbook. It has to reflect who our buyer is and their buyer's journey and what their life looks like, because we can't just be selling to someone for the sake of selling them. We have to really understand who they are and how they actually buy. Mm-hmm. Cool. So when we look at the different elements, so let's start unpacking an ideal customer profile, and then we'll go through a little worksheet together, Sarah, and I'll get you to help me out again on that one, if you don't mind. Yeah. Cool. So what we're looking at right now is typically like what would you say if you're thinking of when you start building out your ideal customer profile, Sarah, and you can feel free in the chat too, to put in like, where do you start? What's the first thing that you think of when you think of your ideal customer profile? Like when you're kind of just like thinking, okay, we're going to target these people. Where do you start there?
First thing I think of is industry. Doesn't mean that I would be pigeonholed to one, but it's one way that I would think about segmenting that ideal customer profile for sure.
Yeah. So I'm going to put it as a professional. I should have just done P for short form. Profile. So yeah, that definitely includes, like you're saying, the industry, their, let's say, job title. And it could be a few different people. It could, like you said, it could be a couple different industries, could be a couple different people in that industry, but we kind of look at the professional profile as a base. Another thing I look at as like a second layer is, how is today's environment affecting that like professional profile? So this environment's very unique, obviously, right now. But it could be, let's say you're selling to accountants. So you don't really want to be selling to accountants in April and May because they're completely swamped. So if you were selling in April and May, you're looking at your professional profile, which is the accountants that are running a small, medium-sized business of, let's say, $1 million to $5 million in revenue. Are we going to sell to them in March and April? Probably not, because they're going to be busy. So that's kind of the second layer of looking at how we're communicating with them, when we're going to communicate with them, that sort of thing.
Okay. And would professional profile include things like company size, company revenue, like any of the other sort of company and industry criteria that you need them to meet? So like it's all encapsulated in that piece?
Yeah. Yeah, exactly.
Cool.
Yeah. So today's environment, and next, what I like to look at, and then I'll get you some help on see if we can fill out the other ones together. But what we look at is like a day in their life. So again, this is about building empathy, right? So what better way to kind of put yourself in the shoes of your prospect by either doing it like I was describing in the very first place, or just by closing your eyes and talking to your team about, okay, what does it look like for my prospect when they wake up to like when they leave work?
Mhm.
Because the more you can understand their day, the better you are at going to be communicating with them about when to communicate with them, how to communicate with them, and also we were talking about staying ahead of them. So what do they need and what are their challenges, that sort of thing. So thinking about their day in the life.
Another great way to go about that piece in particular, somebody told me this, I did not make this up, but is if you have that title in your company, like for instance,
Right.
if there's like, if you're working for a product company, but you're in sales and then you're targeting these really technical people, do you have a CTO at your company? Is there CIO at your company? Like who's the head of product? Who is there that persona that you're reaching out to at your company? And can you, buy them a coffee and have a conversation with them to pick their brain and figure this out? How can you leverage those people at your own company basically to get a sense of what the day in the life is if you can't actually put yourself in their shoes, or if it's too sort of beyond the scope of your own experience to truly imagine it?
Yeah, that's a great idea. Let's put your company. So yeah, two suggestions. One is your customer, and then also your company. And I've heard two um, companies just like role playing. So if they're doing discovery calls and they're selling to, like you said, a CTO, then have a role play discovery call with your own CTO. It's a great way to learn and a great way to pick their brain and understand how they operate. And then two other pieces. What we're going to look at beyond, like, let's say beyond professional, we're going to start digging a little bit deeper into, let's say, traits. So this is a little bit more personal. Is that traits? I don't know if there's an E or not, but let's say traits. I'm talking like personality traits,
Hmm.
personal traits, professional traits, what they value, their mindset, that sort of thing. And then the final piece is kind of this emotional piece, which is like, how do they feel? How are they feeling? It could be at different times of the year. It could be at different times of the day. It could be at different times in their, let's say, professional journey. So if you are, like I said, an accountant, then you probably feel super tired and exhausted at the end of May. So are you going to be excited about taking a bunch of sales calls and Zoom calls on June 1st when you just had the busiest time of year? Probably not. And that's okay. So a great way to connect with your prospect is, hey, I know that it's just been a crazy couple of months for you. Like, here's a free $5, you probably need $10, $10 gift card to Starbucks to get yourself a fancy double. So that's what we're looking at when we look at expanding beyond just like the professional profile and that sort of thing. So let's actually work through this together, and I'll
Sure.
pause one sec while I just change screens. But yeah, let me know if there's any questions in the chat. If you have any comments, feedback about the ideal customer profile, I'd be curious too to know how many people have either had conversations with their customers to like understand them more, like have a purposeful conversation with them, or sat down as a team and just said, okay, we have our professional profile, we know what industry we're going after, we know the job title, but have you actually taken it like deeper in that? If you have, then yeah, put in deeper. If you haven't, then just, you can feel free to pop in the chat just like professional or let's say surface level. And if you have any other questions, feel free to pop them in while we go through a worksheet together.
Yeah, for sure. I'll keep my eye out.
Cool. So you all will have access to this. There's a couple different ways you can fill it out. We're going to be doing it with online sticky note, but essentially what we do is there's no real order to this. Some people like doing it like one, two, and kind of like along the top and the bottom. But if you have some ideas and things that come up, they can go into a couple different boxes. But what we're going to do is we'll start at the ideal organization, ideal person, which is like that professional profile,
Hmm.
and kind of map out a buyer of who we're trying to connect with. And so we'll do that together. We'll show you how it works. We're going to do it with sticky notes, but you can do it by writing on this, or you can do your own sticky notes, that sort of thing. So who should we think about? Who are we selling to, and what are we gonna sell them, Sarah? What do
What's
you
like
think?
a nice, well known B2B example? Who's like a big B2B
How about like Gong,
player?
like a
Yeah, perfect.
call recorder, or
Sounds good.
chorus,
Yeah.
either one.
Perfect.
SaaS company, call recording software for sales teams. So if we were building this out together, Sarah, who would be the ideal organization? Let's say we're not like 5 years, 10 years down the road. We're starting out. We probably have 30 customers. And now we're trying to like really nail down who we're going to be targeting in the future. So if had this company, we were CEOs of Gong, who's our
Mhm.
target organization?
It's got to be an organization with a sales team of say like more than 10 reps. They would probably get like the most value out of it, and we could probably make that argument
Cool.
easiest.
And what about a particular vertical? Would we look at any industries or verticals?
Anyone where they're doing remote sales versus face to face, because we want obviously them to be making their calls through software so that we can
Yeah.
capture that. So a lot of that is going to be SaaS, but it is not limited to SaaS. You can probably expand a little further than that.
Yeah. Okay. So we've got a sales team with 10 plus reps, and we're not going to go through super deep. We'll kind of just pop through these so we can get an idea of going through the worksheet. So we've got our ideal customer or ideal organization. They have a remote sales team. They've got at least 10 people on the team, and their sales process is doing discovery calls and demo calls remotely. So who would we sell to in this team or this company?
I think you'd want like head director, VP, sales, business development.
Yeah. And what you can do too here is like you can either group them together, or what sometimes we do is just like rank them. So let's say it is like if it's a team of 10 plus reps, and yeah, you probably have like your let's say director of sales in this case, and then let's say number 2 might be a sales manager, where we would get to. So you can either group them together or just sort them in, let's say, order of priority. So we've got our ideal person. So we got our professional profile. We know we're calling up the director of sales for this company that does remote sales. And what's the current environment for them right now? How is the current environment kind of affecting them? What pressures would they feel right now with their remote team? So I mentioned one earlier, which was like mental health. So let's say mental health, and staying connected. That's relevant to them right now. Any LCC and like remote teams that are doing selling.
I guess a challenge in actually connecting and having meaningful conversations, because your prospect is also remote in the current environment. So it's harder to get in touch with your prospect than it ever has been. So there's more of an argument to make sure that the conversations you do have are very sort of powerful.
Yeah, perfect. So staying connected. And then when we think of that sales manager, the director of sales, when they get into work, what's their day look like? Just not specifically what they're doing. You can say what they're doing, but what are they kind of consuming their time with? I mean, I think when I think of directors of sales, like a day in their life, they're looking a lot of let's say reports and
like forecasting,
dashboards. Yeah. They're probably putting out a ton of fires.
Yeah, putting out fires. Definitely their attention is split between that team, but also their whatever responsibilities they have to the senior leadership.
Yep. And they might even have some extra, let's say, extra sales pressure depending on what they're selling.
And then also they're going to have some, probably in most cases, some underperforming reps, like, and obviously that has a direct impact on their ability to hit their targets, but the individual targets down to the rep level.
Yeah. Perfect. So we built out a little bit of a good profile here. Now we're going to start digging a little bit deeper, but you can already see that, okay, if you were a sales rep coming into a new company and you were hired and they said, okay, here we've got this awesome call recording software. Here's all the features and product information of it. Go out there and start selling. And you're like, who are we selling to? We're selling to sales teams. Okay, great. Okay, sales teams with 10 plus reps. So already you're qualifying your customer base and your prospects. And now you know exactly who you're looking for. So now we can go to LinkedIn, pull a search, have a look at some director of sales and VP levels. And we can also think of some resources that we're going to follow up with them or chat with them about, which is around remote prospects, mental health, and staying connected as a sales team. And we can also build a little bit of that empathy in understanding when you're having those conversations. It's like, yeah, it must be really challenging in these days, like managing a remote team, because you don't get to do your sales offsites. You don't get to do a big sales kickoff at the beginning of the year, and you start empathizing with them. And we keep going through these layers. So a couple more will probably be another 3 minutes, and we can open up for some Q&A. What would be a big challenge or pain for these director or VP of sales?
Not knowing what your top reps are doing differently from your underperformers.
Yeah.
And then, yeah, like lack of insight and visibility into those calls that are happening. Because as you mentioned, like once upon a time in the office, you could overhear them, you could stand there, you could do these ride-alongs, and now that's much more difficult. So yeah, not knowing much about the conversations that are being had.
Yeah. So you put, reduced time with reps. So you're remote, so you're not having those. You might be having even like reduced time, which is like fragmented conversations. So you don't really get to dig deep with those reps. So a couple of those are great challenges. And now we look at the aspirations. We've looked at a lot about kind of the challenges, the current environment. It feels kind of negative, but what are these? Now we look at like, okay, how can we get excited alongside and help that prospect know that we're on their team and that we're here to help them grow professionally and personally. So what would be an aspiration of a director of sales? What would be their like professional aspiration, let's say?
First top one would be to hit the revenue target.
Yeah. Let's put smash as an aspiration. Smash the revenue target. They also probably would be looking at, let's say, some upward mobility. They want to get promoted. Within, they might be looking at, let's say, if they're, let's just go with the director of sales, they may be looking at a VP role at another company. Maybe they want to start their own company at some point. Perfect. And what do they value? What does a director of sales value? Could be professionally, could be personally, based on like what you know. I'll get it started here, but feel free to jump in. I would say that they value like people. They value people because they're working with people. They have a sales team, but they also value the people that they're talking to, because if you're in sales, you're chatting and you're around people all the time.
Yeah. So I'd say like communication or conversations is a big piece that, yeah, that they value. Like good communication skills, I guess, is something that they value. Yeah. Time management, agreed. Time management, but then also organization and like follow up, all the pieces that go into ensuring that the good conversations don't go to waste.
How about coaching and seeing their own team grow? Like they value their team members and wanted them to grow. Perfect. And where would they hang out? Whether it's virtually or in person, let's just say sales conferences. And hanging out could be like, where do they hang out? Where do they read? Maybe some online forums. So let's say some LinkedIn groups, sales leader groups, that sort of thing. I guess they're reading sales books too, leadership books. Perfect. So now we have built out a much deeper understanding. Like if we just zoom in here and have a look at, if you just had that kind of first circle piece that we were talking about, which was the professional profile, and putting together your communication, your email sequencing, and your discovery calls and your demo calls, if all you knew about that prospect was that they're a sales manager or a director of sales of a team of 10 plus reps, that's one thing. But now we can have a much better conversation. We can build that deeper connection with them because we've unpacked and we're imagining ourselves in their shoes. So now when we're communicating, again, whether it's through email, whether it's through phone, whether it's through Zoom, any mode of conversation, you're now able to build a deeper connection with them and think kind of one step ahead. And the final piece of building out this profile is looking at going deeper. So we kind of gave a couple suggestions. So when we're looking at the ideal person in the organization and their challenges and aspirations, how do you go deeper with that is, let's say, interview your own team members. So if you have your own director of sales, talk to them. Go talk to customers. So it's kind of an action plan to say, okay, this is what I think we know about our ideal customer. How are we going to go deeper and really confirm that we do know this? So talk to your own team members, talk to customers. And when we're looking at this piece here, kind of current environment, day in the life, their values, where they're hanging out, the next step in that would be actually going in, let's say, hanging out where they hang out. So jumping into those forums, start engaging with them where they are, go to webinars, workshops, conferences, all that sort of thing. So now we've got this all built out, and you can do this for multiple ideal customers, multiple industries, whatever you want to do, depending on who you're selling to. But you can see that once you have that built out, now when you're crafting the messaging, you're able to really go deeper and think twice and even three times about what you're saying, how you're saying it, and how it's going to fall on that prospect.
Awesome. Nice. Very clear. Very, very detailed. Cool. So yeah, any questions, guys? Any questions that you had about how you discover any of this information, how you kind of organize this information? Going back, I know that last week we asked a bunch of you guys how you felt in terms of confidence in your knowledge of your ideal customer profile. Like,
Mm.
between 1 and 10, how confident were you about that customer profile? And we had some anywhere between 3 and 10. So you threes, if you have had a chance to kind of think and like, okay, yeah, I'm going to implement some of this stuff to really figure it out. What else do you think that you're missing? What else can we give you to help you get from the 3 to the 7, 8, 9, 10 on that scale? And tens,
It's true. It's
yeah,
kind
go
of like
ahead.
redefining, like you said, redefining what you think you know about the your prospect. And a good exercise to go through is, what I've read, a good exercise you can do is have either yourself, or if you have a new rep as part of the onboarding process or sequence, is like write out a job description of your ideal customer profile. So if you're looking for those director of sales, actually just write out a job description as if you're going to be hiring for them, so that you can kind of think about, what am I looking for and
Mm-hmm.
what would appeal to them. So good exercise is just kind of simply writing that out, because if you can write out a job description, you kind of have the first part of it of knowing who they are, and then the second piece of that would be just having conversations with customers. It's the best way to connect with them and understand who they are.
Yeah, absolutely. And I'm curious to know those people that did have, like a 9, 10 for their ideal customer profile. Had you gone so deep as the kind of empathy piece, or were you a 10 at the company level, the industry level, the persona level? Did you take it that step beyond? Curious to know if this is something that you had factored into your score of 10, or if you think now you're like a 10.5, like 11 maybe, adding
Yeah,
this new information.
it's true. And when I chat with a lot of people, they, like you said, you might say you're a 10 out of 10 because you're like, yeah, I know I sell to sales organizations that have 10 plus people
Mhm.
in that have remote teams. Okay, but that's great to know, and it's great kind of information. But going deeper is much better, especially tactically, when like the rubber hits the road, when you're having active conversation, you're starting to communicate with people. They can sense it, and we can all sense it, right? If you're talking with somebody, if imagine talking with somebody who, if I met somebody who builds sales playbooks and I have a conversation with them, it's like we could finish each other's sentences right away. So that's the type of kind of deep understanding that you want to have, either yourself as the founder entrepreneur, or your new sales team, whether they have the experience in that industry or not. You can empower them with this information so that they feel like they are kind of part of that community, and they can talk confidently with somebody, whether they have 20 years experience in a body shop, like myself, or not.
Yeah, absolutely. It's all about being able to speak that person's language, understand what they're going through, understand the pains that they're going through. And yeah, we've come across some really, really cool ways to do that and gain that knowledge in this session. Yeah, well, as we kind of chat about a couple more things, we will leave time, pop some things in the chat if you do have any questions. Remember that the link is there to that landing page where you can find all of this content. So including that kind of worksheet that we just did today, that will be there so that you can download it and do this for yourself. Um, but yeah, while you guys are thinking of your questions, if you do have any, we do have a couple more things to share with you. Drew, if people want to learn more from you, if they want to get in touch with you, where can they do that?
They can find me. Feel free to connect with me on LinkedIn. If I'm sure if you just search Drew Williams and Sales Playbook, I'll be there. And you can always just go to salesplaybookbuilder.com. You can find me there. There's a bunch of resources on there for founders and entrepreneurs, new sales leaders. There's some templates for one-on-one meetings with your reps. There's templates for onboarding a new sales rep. A bunch of free stuff that's on there that I just give away to help out you. So yeah, head over to salesplaybookbuilder.com and check out the resources section. There's lots of stuff there.
Nice, very cool. And I know that I have for the past 2 weeks been teasing a big announcement that was supposed to come, and it is here finally. My big announcement is that our annual summit, the Predictable Revenue Annual Own Your Growth Summit, is here. So save the date, June 3rd and 4th. We're going to be having 2 full days of live streams with sales experts like Mark Roberge, John Miller, Nick Capozzi, and many more. Aaron Ross himself will also be hosting an AMA about his book, Predictable Revenue. So you can ask him any question you've ever wanted to ask him about the book, about the methodology, about, why it doesn't work anymore and how you can kind of update it for yourself and do something else instead. And I don't know if you guys have come across in your I don't know, in your exploration of LinkedIn or just the internet in general, but there is a comedian called Corporate Bro, and he is really, really funny. You should go check him out. But anyway, he is going to be doing a personalized intro session for us on day one of our Own Your Growth Summit. So that's June 3rd. It's 8:15 a.m. Pacific that he'll be kicking us off for the day. Really, really funny. Honestly, if that's why you come for Corporate Bros, stay for the great speakers. Yeah, he's so funny. Go check him out on YouTube, or I'm sure he's on LinkedIn. You could find him there too.
Yeah.
Ahead of time. But yeah, so we will drop a link for that as well in the chat for you to be able to register for that conference. But that is my big exciting news. Own Your Growth, June 3rd and 4th. Link in the chat to register and get all the details.
Tomato sounds excited about it.
Yes.
Like,
yeah.
finally, we got to announce it. Super exciting.
Yay. Yeah, exactly. Well, it doesn't look like we have any questions. That is okay. It's because you're too busy working on your worksheets and getting it done, and that is fine. Let's remind one more time what is coming up next week.
So next week we're talking about, so now we've got our sales playbook built, we've got our sales process mapped out, and now we've nailed down our ideal customer profile, and we have an idea of how we can build empathy with them and go a little bit deeper. So now we're ready as founders and entrepreneurs, new sales leaders, to bring on those new salespeople. So how do we do that? We're going to be talking about that next week.
Awesome. I'm really looking forward to it. Same time, same place. Remember to do your worksheets ahead of time so that you really have that foundation. You feel ready to take that next step. Again, we've got that link there so that you can go back and find all of those worksheets, download them, do them yourself. And a final reminder to make sure that you're actually registered for these sessions so that you're entered for that giveaway, the prize worth $10,000. We have a question. Was it all about ICP or buyer persona? Well, persona is sort of part of ICP. I think you're referring to today's session, this question.
Yeah, I think sometimes, especially around sales jargon and nomenclature, companies and books and people use different words. So there's ideal customer profile, yeah, buyer persona. I'm sure a few other ones, but really just depending on, you can kind of use any words you want. But what we're talking about is the people that you want to sell to. How do you make a connection with them? How do you put yourself in their shoes? And that's really what we were looking at today. So it was really a lot specifically around the actual person that you're selling to, less about kind of the organization. So the person that's on the other end of the email or the other end of the phone call, how do you make those connections with them?
Right, exactly.
Whatever you call them.
the actual human being rather than just yeah, the sort of nameless, faceless persona at an organization that you're interested in selling to. Um, Cool. Well, thank you so much. Thank you, Drew, for another great session. I'm really excited for next week. All of you guys, remember, register, enter yourself in the giveaway. Make sure to go back, and all the recordings are here on YouTube from the last, well, it'll be 3 at the end of today, all the last 3 sessions, so that you can go watch again, do your worksheets. And we're really excited to see you same place, same time next week.